Hey guys, welcome to my first ever Author Roundtable video. My name is Lachlan Pirie, and joining me today are an exceptionally talented group of young authors. I'd like to welcome Nadine Vanders, HM Jacobs, and Shantel Brunton. Today we will be talking about the process of writing to how writing has changed us as people. If you guys enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to find out more about us, you can find our social media details in the description section below. So guys, just starting off with a very simple question. What's your greatest source of inspiration as writers?
I can start. I think my life experiences and the people around me that I know are a huge inspiration for my writing. I don't necessarily write about them, but I take a lot of their personalities and stuff them into my book. And because they're such an amazing people, so I choose to write about, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is my go-to inspiration, the people around me and my life experiences. And yeah.
Yeah. Chantel?
I'd say one of the biggest sources of inspiration for me would be music. I have a special playlist that I like to do my writing to, and it ranges from all sorts of things from rock to classical music. And then when I'm listening to these songs, it really puts me in the zone for writing.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. How about you, Nadine?
Well, when it comes to my inspiration, it is most of the time the people around me, not only the ones that I'm close with, but I'm an observer.
Yeah.
So this means that I can go out and observe behavior, body language. Even when I see a couple bickering, in a mall or something, I would not really stare at them, but I will take in what I hear and the vibe that it gives me.
Mm.
And because I am such an empath as well, I can literally feel everything from everyone around me and then stick to it, and then use it. Yeah.
So I know myself, when you start off as an author without a big name, without the support of those big publishing companies, it's a very challenging getting your book out there. How have you guys been getting people interested in your stories, starting with Hannah?
Basically, as I have done lately on Instagram, I've just posted a little bit about my characters, like few dumps a day, about who they are inspired by, and like a little bit of background story. I also post a little bit of my book and try to promote it as I write it. So yeah, that's about it, really.
How about you, Chantel?
It's mainly been a lot of Instagram, sharing blurbs, sharing little captions, and trying to make graphics for the book. And I've also been trying to use my social media to do networking. For example, things like today, doing this podcast, doing some other podcasts, and connecting with people who write similar genres, and then forming those author connections. Because I've actually found that authors have been some of my biggest supporters, because we know how hard it is to write a book. And then so we authors, we all want to support each other, and it forms such a nice network. And I'm very grateful for the Instagram, Bookstagram community.
Nadine?
Well, I think this is a little hard for me because it's not that people don't want to hear about my story. They really do. I also get a lot of DMs asking me for chapters, snippets, but I'm a perfectionist, and I haven't reached the editing phase yet. So I'm like, okay, what if I share a snippet right now? You might never see that back in the book because I'm gonna change things up. So at this point, it's so hard for me to share snippets. So that's why I chose not to do it just yet until I finish the first draft. So yeah, what I do now is in the other conversations that I have on Instagram, I my love for my protagonist literally just shines through. I absolutely love him, and everyone that knows me and watches my videos knows this. And I know that it triggers interest because people are asking me questions and they say that they're excited, you know, to meet him. So yeah, I guess it's just the little things that I give away, you know. And yeah, I did a release of the title. I really made that like it's something very big. Wow, it's just a title, but I thought, yeah, let's dedicate a post to it, and really got a lot of nice messages from people from it. So yeah,
that's great.
Triggers their interest.
So how do you guys want to stand out as authors? What do you hope people can take away from your books? And we'll just go around in the loop again.
That like my book is full of mental health. It's a lot of anxiety, it's a lot of panic attacks, it's a lot of those kind of things. And I think what I like for people to take away is that it's normal to have anxiety. It's normal to feel like you're not a human being one day. It's like I haven't really thought about it, but it's like a lot of things. My book includes like LGBTQ and stuff like that. So I want to normalize a lot of those things in my book, and I want people to take that away from it. Like, yeah.
Shantel?
I think also with my book, I do include some LGBTQ plus characters, and I really want to show diverse representation across this sort of spectrum. And there's a quote that I ended up including in my book that one of my reviewers highlighted. It was by Joseph Campbell. Find a place inside where there's joy, and the joy will burn out the pain. I write really, really dark content, but I was hoping, if anything, that people could take away that even if fate hands us a rather cruel lot, I hope that people can find somewhere inside of themselves where there is joy to burn out their pain. And I want to keep expanding this idea as I go through the books and write characters which would inspire a sense of emotional resilience in people, because life is really hard. And I want someone to think, well, I read about this character, and if they could get through X, Y, and Z, I can get through my struggles as well.
Yeah, agreed. Nadine?
The most important thing for me when it comes to my stories is that I want to deliver raw truth. I'm very against glorifying specific kind of behavior, against glorifying of criminality and stuff, which you really see in a lot of books lately. So I want to flip the coin and show people that it's not always as pretty as you think it might be, even when the boy is pretty, you know? So I just really want to show raw truth, and I have like several important messages implemented in throughout the entire trilogy. Can either be motivational and positive, but also some things that I learned to be harsh truth. And yeah, I just want to tell people this by telling a story.
Yeah, that's great. So as writers, has there been certain tendencies or themes that you've wanted to avoid?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, like rape, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is in my book. I have included it, but that's because I went through it a few times, and I really want to put it out there because it has been a plan for 8 years. It has been in the ideas, and I thought, since it's a crime thriller kind of thing, I need to write about it and talk about it in a way. And I thought, anyways, the book is there, and I thought, okay, so let's do it. And it's like, I don't really, there's a part of me that don't want to put it in, but you know, yeah,
I understand totally. Chantel?
I think that is one thing that I can struggle with as well, is because when I do write really dark content, I mean, I don't necessarily want to upset people, but I think that's part of the nature of it. And I think with writing horror, maybe it's not so much a tendency, but sometimes I worry that the label horror itself is too stereotypical
Yeah.
and it brings up a certain idea which the book might not be. And so I didn't want my book just to be like all scares and all murder, blood, and gore. I wanted to be able to include a plot in there as well, and then have all of these elements tie nicely together.
Yeah. Agreed. What do you think, Nadine?
Personally, I don't have a lot of limits when it comes to writing, because to me it's a real challenge to write characters and situations that I would never end up in myself. I also like to explore, different morals and tendencies, because I feel like it's important to be open-minded. But one thing that I wouldn't ever write about is pedophilia.
Yeah.
I'm a mother, so that's something that's really crossing my line, and I would never be able to slip into the skin of a character that actually involves himself with this kind of things.
Yeah, I agree. So
that's just a bridge too far.
How have you guys been approaching like literary agents and publishers, and what are your thoughts on breaking into the industry?
I haven't looked into it yet. I have looked at a few options, but I haven't gotten that far yet, because I really want to focus on the book first and then look what my options are in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Shantel?
I went through all the big traditional publishers in Canada and literary agents, and I sent out a heck ton of query letters to agents. And it's actually kind of funny, because when I got rejection letters, I was so happy, because I read that not a lot of people even got the rejection letter. So I was like, woohoo, they answered me. And I'm like, this was a rejection. It's like, oh, well, at least they answered. I feel special now. So that was one thing that I tried. But I feel that like self-publishing is actually something that I've really enjoyed doing, because I have the control. I hired my editor. So if my editor says, no, take out all of this, well, no, I'm not doing that. So, and he can't make me. I'm the one putting the book out at the end of the day. So I really like having that control. But one thing that I've heard recommended is, if you want to go traditional publishing, look for the smaller publishing houses. Look for like little independent magazines and things like that, and try to go about it that way. I had a short story published in a literary magazine, which I'm blanking on the name, but that was all done through a contest, and that was really, really quite fun. It was through the Right Practice. So that was my little break into the traditional world.
I'd just like to introduce Kieran Majury, who's he's just joined our recorded interview. So just letting you know where we are, Kieran. We're up to question 6 of the questions I sent you.
Okay.
So Nadine, so getting back to where we were, what are your thoughts on the industry at the moment?
Well, I also haven't been approaching any agents or publishers, also for the reason that I'm simply not done yet. And I really agree with Shantel. I feel it's very important not to put boundaries on the creativity of your craft. And I feel like when you are not walking a specific path, they are going to try and change your characters or your storyline, and I'm really afraid that they are going to tell me to change something that I'm adamant about keeping,
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't do it yet. Probably won't. I have a critique partner who tells me, yeah, you have to go traditional, but not sure just yet. No.
Okay, so for the next question, we might do Hannah, Shantel, Nadine, and then we'll go on to Kieran. So guys, are you ever dissatisfied with your final product? Is there still something you can't get across in your final piece of work? And this might be a bit different for Hannah and Nadine's, because you guys are still in the editing phase.
Yeah, of course, but I'm super scared of being dissatisfied, of course.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm trying, like, people are telling me, do not rewrite while writing. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So once I have a chapter done, I always reread it and start rewriting it. And because I feel like I can't move on from that chapter until I get that chapter I just wrote done and good enough for me to move on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think one thing that when I read some of my reviews and people were like, oh, I didn't get this or I didn't like that. And I think, oh, yeah, I probably could have made that come across a little bit stronger. So sometimes I think that I have all these ideas in my head and then I get a little narcissistic and I think I conveyed them perfectly. And then it's like, oh, why didn't someone get it? Well, sorry, dearie, they don't live in your head. So that's the one thing that I've been working on reminding myself is it's like, you know the characters and you know the story better than anyone. So then it's a balance of not just info dumping onto people, but not leaving too much out. So then they get confused and they didn't get something that I thought was blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, it's all about balance.
Yeah, totally agree. How about you, Nadine?
Well, I am often dissatisfied because English is not my native language.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I really did my best to, I also went through courses and stuff, and I hear that my English is quite well for someone who isn't born in an English speaking country. But still, even when it's not a final product yet, I do struggle sometimes with getting the perfect descriptions out because I see it like a movie in my head. And then I'm really having trouble nailing it all down like I would in Dutch. So then I just write it in Dutch first, translate it later.
Yeah.
And I feel like that works, but that would probably be also my biggest problem after it's done. So that's probably going to take me a little while.
Yeah, true. What about you, Kieran? What are your thoughts?
I think I think fundamentally we're never going to be 100% satisfied with something that we do. It's just a case of learning to let go of the piece and let it go. Like I come from mainly film, so like examples I would look to is like George Lucas, James Cameron, Ridley Scott. They're always going back to like Terminator, they're going back to Star Wars, they're going back to Alien, and they're tinkering it. They keep tinkering with it. And I think if you're in any form of creative pursuit, that's going to be part of it. Like it's going to be that part, because I think I talked to Nadine about this whenever we live streamed like a while ago. One of the things with the writing is, so you start your draft and you make your way along and then you finish your first draft, and by the time you get to this point, you're already a better writer than you were at this point. So then when you go back and you edit, you're already becoming a better writer, and then it goes again, and this cycle just repeats itself. And then you kind of have to say to yourself, well, at what point is it just going to be at where it's ready to go? Like, yeah, you're not going to be completely sad. Like I go back over short stories on my blog and I'm like, this is properly terrible. What was I thinking? But at the same time, you know, you see stuff that you're like, okay, well, you know, it's maybe it's weak here, but there's strengths over here. I made like a feature film, and whenever I was in my early 20s, and there's a lot of mistakes in that, and there's a lot of things that I would do different. But at the same time, you're like, you know what? It's you know, it's not Citizen Kane. It's not Reservoir Dogs or anything like that. But it's, you know, there's some potential in there. And I think if you're creative, you kind of know how to make peace with the flaws, but also with the strengths.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, Kieran, every word you said. So going on to our next question. Where do your ideas as authors come from? And has there been a catalyst in your life that has inspired you for certain ideas in your stories?
I haven't really thought about that. The only thing I know for sure is that my inspiration and those kind of stuff, my ideas come from the people around me.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't really thought about that question so much. So yeah.
I agree. You're cool. Shantel?
I think a lot of my ideas, it sounds random, but they just pop into my head. I'm sitting there one day and then I suddenly hear 20 who says, "Hey, get a pen, write this down." What?
Yeah.
Who are you? Why are you telling me what to do? Write it down. It's going to be great. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. Someone's telling me to write stuff down. And then it just kind of like comes from like these random things. Or I'll be sitting there watching TV and I'm annoyed by a character on the show. And I'm like, I got it. I can do that better. So just like these random little things, and then it sparks into a whole idea. I've got a random character, and then I try and build a world for them. And then there we go. Then it just starts like rolling with a story after this character just decided to pop up and say hi. So
Yeah.
I'm always glad when they do. Sometimes I have a random one say hi, and it's like, well, I'm really busy at the moment, but I'm going to write you down and we can talk later, okay?
Yeah. Nadine?
Well, when it comes to this trilogy, what I did is I've been looking at some of my own family bonds. So it's not really a situation that we're talking about. I'm talking about an emotion here, a feeling.
Yep.
And there's one specific kind of bond that I cannot give away too much at this point. But it's where it all started. You know, it was a little seed, and I started with, okay, I want to show this bond, and it grew from there, and everything else that has surrounded it and is surrounding it at this point came from that little seed. So in my case, it was a family bond.
Yeah. Yep.
An unusual family kind of bond, not in a weird way, but more like in parenting and stuff, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Kieran?
I think like for me, it's like ideas come from, anywhere and everywhere. Like what Shantel was saying, sometimes you see something you don't like and you're like, I can improve on this, or if they just told this story instead of that story, and I think like keeping like an ideas folder is kind of one of like a good way to kind of like, it's almost like if you keep a dream journal, you're going to start having more dreams, because like it's like your subconscious is almost like, oh, okay, well, if we're going to like be taking this seriously, then let's give you something to work with. And with ideas, like it'll be a reaction to something. Sometimes it's something on the news, or just like questioning something, and yeah, just kind of like recording the ideas. For me, like a good test of like what idea is actually worth pursuing is, am I still thinking about it like 10 years down the line? There's like a couple of ideas that have kind of like persisted and they just haven't gone away and haven't necessarily like turned them into a book or something like that, but I'm like, it's still there, it's still kind of knocking about in my brain. So there must be a reason for that. There must be a reason it sticks with you.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, guys, so being authors entering the literary landscape, what are your thoughts on where fiction writing is going? Do you think fictional stories can be improved in general? And what are your thoughts on audiences nowadays?
Honestly, I haven't given that much thought, but yeah, I think that fiction writing, or whatever you said, will improve as the years go by, really. But other than that, I don't know what to answer.
Your kill, Shantel?
I think fiction writing is going to get better and better with more accesses to resources, being able to research. You don't necessarily have to take any sort of creative writing classes when there are so many resources on the internet.
Yep.
And in terms of audience, I think, because I sent my book out as like advanced review copies, I think the one thing to keep in mind with audiences is they're going to have very diverse opinions. One reader says, oh, you don't have enough description. Another reader says, oh, there's too much description. So people are going to have very varying opinions. And the more we as authors can get our books out there, the more we're going to like reach an audience that's going to be really diverse and have a lot of different opinions. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see as how like audiences evolve. And I think fiction is just going to keep getting better and better. And especially with the emergence of different subgenres and different styles, and people being more interested in just trying out creative fiction, because there's not this like gatekeeping thing where you have to get past a literary agent now. You can put your story online and make connections.
Yeah, totally. Nadine?
Well, I do agree with Hanya and Shantel. I do think fiction will become better also because of the Bookstagram and Facebook groups that you have when it comes to writing. I feel like everyone is really supporting each other. But I do see that I haven't been reading like a tons of books because I was too busy writing. But lately I've been picking up books again, also art reading for people. And what I do see is that sometimes I feel like there's great potential in a story, like I'm talking awesome potential, but I can literally see that they had to rush it because of their busy lifestyles that we all have nowadays. And that's something that I think is very sad because, like I said, the book has great potential, the plot is amazing, but I just can sense the rush, and that's unfortunate. So I just want to like advise everyone who wants to write to take your time. Don't let life rush you.
Absolutely.
It's better to take 4 years doing it, or maybe 10 if that's what you need, if that means that you're going to put out something that you're 100% happy with.
Absolutely. Kieran?
I think like I'm not sure what we mean by like getting better. I think there's going to be more of it. There's going to be more, more people publishing books. It's easier now. You set up a blog, you can publish. Like with most things, whenever there's more of it, it means there's going to be more crap as well. There's going to be more people just kind of putting out stuff for the sake of it. Probably be a lot of like one-time authors will put out maybe like one book, but like I think things will niche down more. Like if you really want like a specific subgenre of something, if you want like vampire steampunk, I mean, there's probably going to be like hundreds of books to choose from, as more and more people kind of have that confidence to publish works. I think like the main concern will be like, what if you write a book that's like so subversive or like offensive or whatever, then it's just kind of stripped from the internet. We're more vulnerable now as well. If you say something that's like wrong or whatever, or it's not even like wrong as you're writing it right now, but like maybe in a few years time, they're like, actually, we don't like what you said in that, and then it's just ripped from the internet and nobody can find you. So I don't know. I think audiences primarily will stay the same. It's just going to be, you're really going to have to be honest with your audience if you want them to kind of listen to, because like readers, I think, are really good at like spotting phonies, like people who don't know what they're talking about, so I think it'll be better in the sense that like the top authors, the popular authors, the ones who kind of rise to the top are going to be probably the ones who are good at just being honest with their audience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So guys, how do you go about addressing concepts and feelings that are hard to describe in words?
I know for myself, if I have to do sad scenes or something like that, and honestly, I'm not good at describing sadness or that particular details when it comes to writing a scene. And what I normally do is I cry. I literally make myself cry. I try to feel how it feels, and then be quick to put it into detail. That has worked for me because when I have showed people what I've written, people have started crying themselves because it made such an impact on them. So that's what I do.
That's great, Hanya. Shantel?
And yeah, I love your really immersive strategy. I try and do something similar. And sometimes it's a little ridiculous, but I walk around and I have like my hand out and I'm imagining the character holding my hand and I'm like, okay, let's get the ideas going. And then I'll read a lot, and then I'll try and listen to music to create that sense of feeling. And if I really can't describe a feeling, I like to take crayons and color what I think the feeling looks like. I put it into another medium, and then after it's in another medium, people can look at the art and go, wow, you were in a mood. And then after getting that kind of reaction from my friends and my family, somehow it gets easier to suddenly put it into words after I've seen it in these bold crayon colors.
That's really interesting, Shantel. I haven't heard of someone doing that before. Nadine?
Yeah, fun.
When it comes to concepts, what I do is I literally just watch movies or I read other books. Like I had a very hard time describing fighting and shooting scenes. I just couldn't grasp the words. So I look it up and I see how others do it, not because I want to copy them, but because I want to learn from them. So I think that's very important.
Yeah.
And when it comes to feelings, well, this may sound ridiculous, but I interview my characters. So what I do is I have spent years developing my characters to the point that they literally feel real to me, like they're my family, or, you know, I can literally just imagine what they would do in probably any given situation. And sometimes I just picture a dark room and a table and me on one side, and I will literally just grab them and put them on the other side. And I will tell them, let's have a little chat, you know?
Yeah.
And often they tell me, or they show me how they would respond and how they would feel. And every character has a different way of expressing feelings as well. So it's all about just getting into the skin of your character. And if your character is awkward around the situation and doesn't even know how to express, then that's fine too.
Yeah. Totally. That's really cool, Nadine. What about you, Kieran?
Yeah.
With feelings like that are hard to kind of get into words, like I try to kind of find like a physical action. I try to, because like, you know, we, you know, as above, so below. What's happening inside is expressed, you know, outwardly. Yeah. You know, there's like a great bit of like acting advice from the guy who played RoboCop, and it was basically, you know, if you're annoyed at someone, but you're at the kitchen sink, you will be so concentrated in doing the dishes. So it's like, it's almost like trying to get that kind of contrast and kind of build it up. You know, you kind of almost, sometimes you can't quite express it, but like if the character is doing something, you know, someone pacing about the place is going to come across as more nervous. You know, we kind of have this innate kind of ability to kind of recognize that. So somebody pacing up and down is going to be totally different, in a totally different headspace from someone who's kind of, you know, sitting and chilled out and stuff. So I try to kind of find like it, I try to express it kind of like through, you know, the physical world, basically through action or through just kind of what is going on around them. Can I find a contrast? Can I find something to kind of juxtapose it with, you know?
Yeah, totally. So we have a nice mix of authors here in this group and types of books that we're doing. So I think it's appropriate to ask this question. So are any of you guys worried about being slotted into a certain category?
No, not really, because I know whether or not I would like it, my book will, and I, for that sake, will be categorized, even if I don't like it. And I think that is about all the books, really, and all movies. You will, and books will be categorized to what people like and not like. And I think that is perfectly okay. I love this story, and I have lived with it for so long, and it's up to people to judge what they do, if whether they like it or not. That is not up to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Shantel?
I think one thing that I might be a little bit concerned about is with writing things like horror and dark fantasy, and they all work very nicely together in terms of branding and having a similar sort of genre. But if I wanted to step outside of that genre and say, write a collection of children's fairy tales, would people suddenly think, well, that's really odd. That's not what you write. Should you even be doing that? Because I had a friend who wrote across, she did dark romance, she did something more literary fiction, and then she wrote young adult fantasy, and people are like, well, why are you doing this? Stick to one thing. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I would be. It's like, I wouldn't ever want to be told to, you know, just stick to one thing, which is something I don't think I do anyways. But I think sometimes readers might react more viscerally than we would expect if we wrote something so different than what they're used to.
Yeah. Stephen King is a real example of that, but yeah. Nadine?
Well, no, not really, honestly. I agree with Hania because I write because it's my passion. I write a story because I feel that I need to get it out there, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. That doesn't mean that doesn't make us enemies at all.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But you, Kieran?
With like categorization and stuff, you have to understand like it's nothing personal against you. It's just it makes it easier for the audience to understand kind of what you are, because if you are like a genre writer, then people will be like, oh right, they're a horror writer, so there's going to be a monster or there's going to be a serial killer or something like that. But like as for people saying like, I just want to put this out there, like anyone who says stick to what you to know or are the biggest losers ever. Those people are losers and you don't need them in your life, because like if everyone just stuck to what they were good at, like I mean I wouldn't be writing a book, you know what I mean? Like you need to kind of get out of your comfort zone. Just I really dislike that whole I don't expect you to do that. You're like, well, you didn't expect me to be an author until I wrote a book, so
Yeah.
if I had to go through life relying on what you think, then I would be stuck at square zero. It's when people say stay in your lane or whatever, they're basically saying you're doing better than me and I don't like it. So that's what I hear when people say stick to what you're doing, because these people who have like maybe one talent at most, where if you're like a kind of jack of all trades, you can multitask, you can like kind of do whatever you want. And it just really annoys me when people are like sticking your lane and all that. I think it's just such a loser mindset, and you just need to step away from it and just cut those people out. You're not missing it in anything. So
Gold, Kieran. This question's probably like exactly what you just said, but I'll say it anyway. So do you guys sometimes feel like your lack of experience on a certain topic will show in your stories? And if so, how do you overcome that fear of self-doubt?
For me, I write about like a lot of crimes and action, and as Nadine said for a few questions ago that okay, I forgot what I was going to say, but what I was going to say was what was you saying? I'm having a hard time processing. I'm like overwhelmed right now.
Sort of questions mainly about self-doubt and how you overcome it. Particularly when you find subjects that you don't have a lot of experience on and you're trying to sound like you know what the subject is about.
So what I'm trying to do is I try to research what I'm going to write about, like shooting scenes, crime scenes, investigations. I'm trying to put myself in that situation, and I'm trying to rewrite that until I figure out that okay, that can work. I also talk to people who have been or are policemen in America to make sure that what I do is right, because I don't want to write like wrong things when it comes to investigations. And yeah, it will make a bad impression, I think, on my book if I do that.
Yeah, I totally understand that whole thing. You, Shantel?
I think when I started writing the fantasy book, I had a lot of stuff about swords and glaives, and I'm like, I don't know how to use these weapons at all. So it was funny because I took a giant board and I'm trying to hold the giant board, and I practiced hitting the tree and things like this. And it's like, this thing is so heavy. And I was actually getting sore arms from trying to use my makeshift glaive. My family thought I was ridiculous. They're like, she's waging war against the trees, people. This is a new book now. The trees are evil. It was an entire thing. So sometimes just knowing that it's like, yeah, I'm not going to know everything. But I mean, at the end of the day, I did my best. I know I beat up some trees with a board. And that's one thing I just always reflect back on, is just try to do your best. And then people are going to find something to complain about anyways. They're going to say, oh no, this would never work, or this is too unrealistic. But at the end of the day, you can do hours and hours of research. And I want to get the book written as best I can and put it out there, because there's no satisfying everyone. So might as well just go for it.
Totally. Nadine?
Well, like Anya said, I also feel like a good research can make up for some of the lack of experience that you might have. My books also revolve around heavy crime. Well, I can assure you, I do not have a criminal record. I wouldn't even steal like a piece of candy from the store. So yeah, when it comes to this, it's all about research. Talk to people that live this life. I even considered writing to a prisoner in America to see if I could get some information, but my boyfriend was like, oh, please don't. So I was like, okay, I will not do it. But I would, like Hania said, interview policemen to see if I grasped it, you know, because you cannot know everything. And if you don't know it, then you have to research it. So that's what I would tell everyone, like pay proper attention to your research.
Yeah, totally. Kieran?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like with self-doubt, I mean, I think you just have to kind of keep pushing forward anyway. Like I was watching some lecture on how to write short stories, and the person giving it talked about, and there's like when people are learning like a new skill, they get to, it's called like the 75% mark, you know, and it's when they get to that point, that's when they give up, because they feel like they've still got 75% more to go. You know, when you're like, say you're learning guitar or whatever, you know, like say you're doing well, and it's just you kind of keep hitting these walls. That's the 75% mark, and you think you've still got another 75% to go, but you've only got 25%. So you just need to keep persistent. So I think every author, like when you're writing something, even if it's like a blog post or something like that, there's going to be points where you're like, I should just give up and I should stop writing. Who am I? What right have I to ever written anyway? Who would want to read my thing? But the interesting thing is, like, that's, you know, like a story is almost kind of like that, you know, the 75% mark, you know, it's like on one of my Instagram posts, I talk about like the death of the mentor, and that always seems to happen around about the 75% mark. You know, Gandalf dies in Lord of the Rings, Obi-Wan in Star Wars, Morpheus gets captured out of the Matrix. You know, there's all, like at the 75% mark, that's when you feel like you're closest to giving up. So I think if you are like starting out and you do feel like you want to give up, or you just kind of want to stop writing, I think if anything, that should give you more fuel to kind of carry on, because that's probably a sign that you're closer to the end than you are to the start.
Great stuff, Kieran. That's great. So I know finding time to write can be very difficult, especially when you have full-time work, or, you know, if you're a full-time parent and you don't have books as your main source of income, which as self-published authors we are. How do you juggle life and writing? And what are your tips for anyone who's watching this video on how to do this?
So as I said previously, I only work like a few days a week. Yep. So normally when I'm writing, I do writing sprints between, it can vary between 9 to 12 to 24 hours really, where I sit down and write. So, and even then it can be really, things can prove to not go well, and I will, I don't know how to answer that, sorry.
Oh, it's a complex thing to say. I understand it totally. What about you, Shantel?
Well, throughout writing my books, I did have to balance writing with like full-time university assignments. I remember my professor, he'd see me sitting at this chair in the morning and he'd go, writing again, you have a test today. And it's just like, I know, I was studying all night, and I'd get 100% on that test too. So it was finding these little gaps of time where I found a lot of people might just pick up their phone. If I was in between classes and I had 20 minutes, I would sit down and just write something. I think some people have an all or nothing mentality that's like, oh, if I'm going to write, I have to sit down, I have to write for an hour. And it's like, Even if you just write for 5 minutes and then see where it goes, write down a single sentence. That's it, one single sentence. And do these small things rather than thinking, I have to get so much done. And the method I really like to use, Hanya mentioned writing sprints. And so there's something called the Pomodoro method, which is where you would set like a little timer, and it's called Pomodoro because it's Italian for tomato, and those like little kitchen timers that would tick, 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 tick. So then you set that for, let's say, around 20 minutes, and then you just write, get it all out, and then, you know, back to your life and fit these little intervals in, you know, before your kids get up, before you have to go to work. Maybe you write best at night, so fit it in before bed. And if you're really busy during the day, maybe just carry around a little notebook or use the notes app on your phone to write down those ideas that pop into your head at the most inopportune times. Because most of the time, I think when you sit down to write, suddenly it goes blank. But then when you start doing something, that's when the ideas start coming. So if you can discreetly like sneak down those little ideas in the midst of your busy day, then that'll really help you when you have the larger gaps to sit down and write.
Great stuff, Shantel. Nadine, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is something I'm really struggling with because I'm also a full-time mother. I have my web shop, of course. I was also studying law up until 3 months ago. Yeah. So I also have like a lot of things going on. And what I noticed is that I really benefit from time blocks. So this will mean that I am literally blocking my time for writing, like from 9 till 10:30 in the morning. I will go into my office. I will close my door. I will also tell my people if they are home because my husband works. My child is at school normally, but it's summer break. So this means he's around all the time. So then I'm asking my mom, you know, hey, can you watch him for a little bit so I can get some writing done? And I really try to protect that time, you know, like build in the hours. Make it known to your family members, to the people around you, that you will not be available. Yeah. And hold yourself accountable. Show up. Yeah. That's what I'm telling myself. You got to show up. And, you know, I know it's not always easy. Honestly, I really do. But especially when you, like, I'm getting close to the end now of book 1. Yeah. And that only makes it easier for me to really eliminate everything that's distracting me and just go for it.
Yeah. Awesome, Nadine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, the Pomodoro technique is really helpful. I think set a timer, do a couple of rounds, you know, 25 minutes, 10-minute breaks, and then do a couple of them and then know when to walk away. Because there's like, you do need to balance things out. And, you know, to a certain point, if you're like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm always writing. I mean, are you actually always writing, or maybe are you using that as an excuse to kind of duck out of certain other responsibilities? So yeah, I think set a timer and for me, it's about building up consistency. Like I would far rather write 500 words every day for the rest of my life rather than maybe have like, you know, do 1,000 words every couple of weeks. I would far rather be consistently writing every day, you know, instead of like doing bursts and stuff like that, because I can't work with bursts because the gap between the bursts gets larger and larger. Whereas if I'm consistent, if I'm showing up every day, doing less but showing up every day, it works out better for me in the long run.
Totally. Same as you, Kieran. So guys, 2 final questions. What's the last great book that you've read, and what book has shaped you as a writer?
The last book I read was probably Thirst by Jo Nesbø, who is a Norwegian thriller author. And I really enjoyed his book. But when it comes to what book shaped me, I don't really know. I think I shaped myself as a writer along the way.
I'm the same, totally. Shantel?
The last great book that I read was called Vanilla by Mona Kabani. She's an indie horror author on Instagram, and that's how I connected with her. This was a psychological horror where like all of these children are dying, and like what keeps them alive is the devil's blood. And it's about making sacrifices, and well, when the devil finds a child that he loves more than anything, what's he going to sacrifice to keep her alive? And the book was just, it really kept me guessing. And even when I was trying to write a review for it, I'm like, I don't know what to say. It was just so good. Just go and read the book because I really loved it. And I'd say the book that shaped me as an author was a young adult book called Cut by Patricia McCormick, about a girl struggling with self-harm. And the reason why I think this shaped me as an author is because at the back of the book there was a thing that said novel writing contest, and I'm like, I could write a novel. This can't be too hard. And it was just that little idea from there. That was when I started trying to write a novel. And I'm very grateful that I picked up that book and that copy of the book with the advertisement in the back.
That's awesome, Shantel. How about you, Nadine?
Well, the last great book that I read is actually my critique partner's book. It's a beta read, so I cannot say anything yet, but all I can say is that it's probably one of the best raw pieces that I've ever laid eyes on. And when it comes to books that shaped me, it's hard for me to say because I've been reading so many different kind of things. I've been reading Dutch books as a child when I couldn't read English yet. I really had a lot of time, and I would read like 7 books in 2 weeks, maybe, as a child. So I really read so much Dutch books that I can't even remember them anymore. It was like, wow. And then I also spent a lot of time on Wattpad because I wanted to know what made people tick without them really publishing their books like in the way that we are going to be doing now. So I think I learned something from everything, let it be positive or negatively.
Yeah. Awesome, Nadine. And finally, Kieran.
So yeah, last great book I read, Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky, because like I've had this book for years. I mean, look how skinny it is, and like it just took me ages to read it. And it's weird. Sometimes like you read a book from like a couple of years ago, and I was like, you're like, I feel like a total alien to the human race. I don't feel like anyone, like I feel so disconnected with my fellow man. But I read this and I was like, not only is this guy speaking my language, I feel like he is me in like another life. Like this guy, you know, like they all talk about how like the first section is like the best part, but I love the whole second section where it's like there was just something so honest about when he's like, I'm going to get this coat and I'm going to walk past this guy and I'm going to look at him and I'm going to pretend like I don't know him. And I was like, holy moly, I have had thoughts like that, of such levels of pettiness. Like it was unreal, and then when he talks about how he wants to go out with his friends drinking, but he doesn't actually like any of his friends. I'm like, this is me. I've had these thoughts. I've never and then after that, I kind of read Death of Ivan Ilyich. And I was like, again, this feels like someone has just kind of written down thoughts that I've had. Like, it's crazy. The Russian authors, I don't know what was happening in Russia back then, but like they just seem to have this kind of, they just are able to tap into that kind of truth or whatever. And then as for books that shaped me, this one here, Coogan's Trade by George V. Higgins. It's a crime book, but it was like it was like the first novel that I read where it's like it's almost like done completely in dialogue. There's very little description, there's very little action, and there's just like a lot of talking. And I was like, oh, so you can actually do a book and it's just completely dialogue. And because like I like writing dialogue, it's one of my favorite things. How good am I at it? I don't know.
Have you read this one, The Friends of Eddie Coyle?
Yeah.
This one's great. Same author.
Honestly, I prefer this one. I haven't read it. Check it out. It's a wee bit longer, but it's just, again, it's kind of like that Dostoevsky thing. It's like you feel like someone's inside your brain and they're kind of articulating thoughts kind of that you've had, that the way you were talking earlier about like having those feelings that like are hard to articulate. Sometimes you'll get an author and just through like I don't know, their sheer honesty, they will articulate that feeling, and that's kind of what both these books kind of did for me. So yeah,
that's relatability.
Yeah, relatability, honesty, just kind of just even like I'm also for the first time, I've never watched The Sopranos, so I'm making my way through that for the first time. And like, I've never encountered something. I was always like a big fan of The Wire. I always thought that was like the top, TV show. But The Sopranos, I'm like, this is just way more honest, and it's more about a person, because we can all kind of relate to Tony, because he's just like, he's underappreciated in this world of kind of like idiots, and he's just doing the best that he can to get by. But he's a sensitive, emotional soul, and I'm like, well, that's kind of all of us to a certain extent. There's like a deep relatability, yep. and it doesn't steer away from the repugnance of him either. And I kind of feel like we're all, we've got a bit of good, and we've got a bit of evil, and we've got a wee bit of, we've got a bit of admirable, and we've got a wee bit of like repugnance in us. And I think like The Sopranos really kind of like that off.
Definitely, I totally agree with you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I love how much
you wrap this up soon. So to all the guys on this video, thank you so much for joining me today. For everyone watching this video, if you haven't already, remember to check out the social media links below. Also, if you'd like to meet other awesome writers and learn more about our journeys, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks heaps, guys. I'll catch up with you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you, Lachlan.
Bye. Bye, Shantel.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.